Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. This is Lydia, aka The Pop. And for this video, I kind of wanted to do like another my 2 cents thing like I did with the last video. It's not necessarily going to be low stakes. I'd actually argue that it's probably going to be a little more high stakes actually. Maybe a little bit controversial in some circles, but it's kind of something that's been on my mind recently, and I kind of wanted to talk about it in a kind of like a low budget, unscripted kind of think piece, I guess. And it mostly has to do with a video I saw yesterday actually. And I kind of had some thoughts, not necessarily on the video itself, but kind of more like on a more broader topic, I suppose. And if you hadn't guessed by the title, it kind of has to do with the concepts of forgiveness and trust, especially the way we tackle those two different topics in this society. How I guess we kind of conflate one with the other when we probably shouldn't. And I just kind of wanted to talk about it. I'm not entirely sure if it's going to come to like a specific conclusion or anything, because I don't really have the answers. But I'm hoping that maybe whoever watches this, maybe it'll give them something to think about. So here's what I have to say, but before I say it, I do have to talk about the video first, and I'm also going to have to do a change in scenery, not just because I think it looks cool, but I do also have other places to be after this. Okay, so here we are in a different scenery. Yes, this is my car. Yes, I use it to go places, and I will be going places after this, but not before I do talk about that video I mentioned that got me thinking about things. So yesterday I discovered this YouTube channel called Illuminati. I think that's what it's called. I apologize if I mispronounce it. It's my first time discovering this channel, courtesy of FD Signifier, believe it or not. I have mentioned I watched his stuff in the past. So it was kind of this video I think was like posted a couple weeks ago, and so the YouTuber in question, in this video, she had a conversation with another, kind of high-profile, I guess, YouTuber named iDubbbz. And when I first heard that name before, I was wondering, where have I heard that particular name before? I know I heard it somewhere. And as it turns out, I know who iDubbbz is, also known as Ian. I have never seen any of his content before, actually. And having looked at some of that stuff before in another video before that, I'm really glad I didn't. I'm really glad I was not invested in YouTube back in the 2010s as I more or less am now. But the first time I actually heard about this guy was from another YouTube channel called Cat Black. She's another one of the OGs, and so I actually went back and saw that video after the other video I'm talking about, so I could get a little more up to speed about this guy. He's basically like a tall, skinny white guy, basically, who had, like, I guess what you call a racist edgelord phase, I guess. So the channel in question, Illuminati, again, apologize if I mispronounce that, So she decided to have like a conversation with this guy. It was actually a pretty decent conversation. It was like talking about like the damage, the harm this guy caused with his racist content in the past. Like, I guess it's something that he wants to change and I suppose make amends. Like, I don't know what that's gonna look like per se. I guess it depends on who the people were harmed. I'm not gonna really hash out the stuff that happened, like that led to the harm, like not just the general casual racism, but like he did hurt specific people, black women, black content creators, based on my understanding. And so there's a conversation there to be had. But I was he said he was sorry, and I know people aren't gonna like just take him at his word, like that's fair. And I'm not saying you need to, because that's really not my place. Especially since I'm not the major group that he had targeted and hurt with his content. But the conversation in itself did kind of had me thinking, kind of like the general broad topics about forgiveness and trust, especially when you've hurt people. Like, what does that look like in this society? I know there are conversations that people are trying to have right now about it. I don't know what I don't have. I want to keep in mind that I don't really have the answers for any of this stuff that I'm talking about, but I kind of wanted to put in my my 2 cents, I suppose, on this. Like, I think what I really am thinking about is, I guess, the way we frame it all. Like I feel like that the end goal, it feels like, is to earn forgiveness from a person or a group of people that you've harmed when you've done something that has harmed them. And maybe that's not the way we need to go about it. Now, before anybody tries and comes at me about that, I do want you to hear me out on this, because this is me trying to put this into words. So, forgiveness, what is forgiveness anyway, I guess? It's something that it could be, it's when you hurt somebody and you say you're sorry, or if you do something to show that you're sorry, then the person that was harmed, in theory, is supposed to dole out forgiveness. And then also in theory, when forgiveness is doled out, then you're not supposed to do that thing again. But some people in certain circles will think that forgiveness is not enough, or forgiveness should not be doled out so easily. It's something, it needs to be earned. And to be honest, I don't fully agree with that. I did have a Christian upbringing, and I do still adhere to that faith, so I'm probably going to be a little bit of bias there. But, so, forgiveness, it is something that you do dole out. Like, it is something that you give, regardless if the person earned it or not. That's how I've always seen forgiveness to be. But if that is really the case, then if you can just dole it out unconditionally, I suppose, can you expect this person who caused harm to then move on and not do that harm again? Or if you just dole it out unconditionally, then do you feel like that maybe this person is being enabled to continue repeating that harm, or maybe cause other harms, and then they feel like they'll be exonerated if the person they harmed just forgives them like that? And again, I'm not saying you should dole it out if you don't feel like it. I know in elementary school, at least, I know that narrative when you're being bullied by the bully, and the teacher steps in and forces the bully to say they're sorry, and then they expect you to then forgive them in the end. I know that narrative. I'm familiar with it, but and then, if the person is forced to say sorry, even if they don't really mean it, and then the person who was harmed is expected to just forgive, even if they do not mean it. But that's not what I'm trying to talk about or go about here. I feel like when framing this kind of stuff, I don't think we should be framing forgiveness as like the be-all, end-all when it comes to things like restoration or healing, when trying to bridge a divide in that regard. I think what we really need to do is I think the better way to reframe it, I think, is not to seek out forgiveness, but to restore trust, or try and attempt to restore trust that was broken. Forgiveness and trust, the way I see it, the way I have seen it, they're not the same things. Forgiveness is not something that a person earns. It is something that needs to be doled out. Forgiveness is something that can be doled out whether the person has earned it or not. But the same thing cannot be said about trust. When you have broken somebody's trust, then it's not, I don't necessarily want to say it's something that can't be fixed. I know in some cases it can be, but that is definitely something that does need to be earned when you've broken somebody's trust in you. Like, yes, they can forgive you and they could move on, but do they trust you? Just because they have forgiven you does not necessarily mean they're going to trust you again. So, I guess what I'm trying to say is that I don't think forgiveness is necessarily, some people, when they've caused harm, I don't think forgiveness is something is what they should be seeking. I think what they really need to be seeking is repairing trust that is broken. I think that's something I think that's something that needs to be the main goal. Not necessarily forgiveness, but rebuilding of trust. I feel like I keep saying those things too much, but I feel like I'm repeating myself, honestly. But that's kind of what I'm trying to get at, I guess. And I think that would be the better way to go about it, because it is something that you could work towards doing, try and earn when you've hurt somebody. Because I feel like that's probably the main thing. Like, how do I trust that you're not going to do this thing again? What are you doing? How exactly are you going about trying to repair the damage that's been caused? What exactly can you do? What exactly are you doing that makes me feel like I can trust you again. And trust is conditional. Trust is something, I guess, a little more concrete than forgiveness, I would say. You know what? I'm gonna pause this for a moment. I'm gonna try and take some time during my drive to my destination to try and re-articulate what I'm trying to say, I guess. Re-articulate, and then hopefully maybe things will come together and make a little more sense towards the end of this video. Okay, I'm not exactly at my destination just yet. I had to stop for gas. But I've taken a little more time to articulate my words, just a little. And I think the best way to try and come about what I'm trying to get at in terms of forgiveness and trust is to talk about it through a story. It's a biblical story, and I know some of you may not like the idea of that. But I want to tell it anyway because I feel like maybe it might have some relevance to what I'm trying to get at. So it's from the book of Luke, the Gospel, and it's about the story of the tax collector Zacchaeus. So he was a tax collector back during the Roman occupation. Tax collectors didn't exactly have the greatest of reputations back in that day. And Zacchaeus had a reputation being a tax collector. He also had a reputation of exploiting people that he took taxes from, taking more than what was actually needed. But he heard that Jesus was in town. And being on the shorter side, he couldn't see the guy. Something I can relate to, being 5'1". So he climbed up a tree to see Jesus, and Jesus saw him, and he said, "Zacchaeus, come down." And Zacchaeus took Jesus and the disciples to his home. And during that time, Zacchaeus realized that he had caused harm to people from his exploitation. He told Jesus that he would sell half of his possessions to make amends, and not only that, but to anybody that he harmed that he exploited from, he planned to pay them back 4 times over. Now, diverging a little bit from biblical canon from that story, I'm starting to think, Zacchaeus didn't necessarily need to do all that stuff because he was already forgiven. Jesus being Jesus, he forgave the guy for his sins. But it seemed like for the tax collector, it was not enough. He needed to mend bridges. He needed to make amends. He needed to pay reparations to the people that he harmed. And I imagine, him being a tax collector with the reputation that he had, Zacchaeus, I imagine that there were people there that probably didn't trust him. Like, they're probably like, oh sure, I'll believe it when I see it. Like, yeah, he was forgiven, but did people trust him again? That's the thing. That's kind of the thing I'm trying to articulate as well. Trust and forgiveness, as I mentioned before, are not the same thing. Forgiveness is meant to be unconditional. At least that's how I believe it to be. Trust is conditional. You can be forgiven all you want. There will be people there that'll forgive you, but whether they forgive you or not, do they trust you? If you have broken that trust, how are people, they'll be skeptical of you. They'll be like, well, yeah, sure, there are other people who may have forgiven you. Just because they forgive you, that doesn't mean they trust you. That doesn't mean I'm going to trust you. So, yeah, that's the way I see it. Forgiveness can be doled out at any time, whether it's earned or not. The same cannot be said of trust. And that's kind of what I feel like we're missing in this broader conversation. Like, I know in that video with iDubbbz and Illuminati, I know that it's framed in the context of restorative justice and reparations. But whether you believe in restorative justice or punitive justice, wherever you fall on that discourse, like, even if you feel like justice was carried out in some form or fashion, if forgiveness has been earned or not, and again, I don't feel like forgiveness is conditional. That's more unconditional. The real question is, what have you done to earn people's trust again? What have you done to mend those bridges to earn people's trust again? If any. I'm gonna pause this once again and get back to the destination I'm supposed to get to. Okay, I'm at where I'm supposed to be. I got a little time to kill. So, what I'm trying to get at what I'm trying to get at with this conversation, with this think piece of mine, is it feels like in the broader grand scheme of things, when we talk about harm and forgiveness, I feel like there is way too much emphasis placed on the forgiveness part. Especially if the only reason the person who caused harm is trying to make amends in the first place is to earn forgiveness as the be-all end-all. And I don't think that maybe we should be framing it that way. I feel like, now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't try to seek out forgiveness from the people you've harmed. That is something you should do, but I don't think that should really be the main priority if you've caused harm and you want to make amends. I think what we really need to prioritize is repairing trust. The trust is broken, and you want to try and repair it, amend it. Try and do what you can to show others that you can trust them again. And again, I'm saying this in the context that forgiveness is unconditional. That's what I believe. But trust is conditional. That's what needs to be earned. That's what was broken. And I feel like if we were to reframe the conversation of earning trust rather than trying to earn forgiveness, I feel like maybe it would put some of the burden, or take off some of the burden from the people that are harmed, especially people who are part of minority or marginalized groups who were harmed. Because, again, I mentioned before, forgiveness is unconditional. It's not necessarily something you can quantify. Trust is something you can quantify. Trust is something that needs to be earned. I feel like a lot of people can agree on that. And I feel like if we recentered the main goal to be repairing of trust, I feel like that would probably take off a lot of the burden placed on people harmed and put the onus on the person that caused harm to try and repair the trust that was broken. Now, you don't need to agree with me on this at all. This is just my opinion. I'm not even entirely sure if there's any precedence for this, like journalists or scientific or academic wise or whatever, social science wise. I don't know. I haven't really looked it up. This is all just purely my opinion based on what I've seen, not just from the video, but from other videos that have talked about this kind of stuff before in the past. I feel like maybe that's where we need to go if we are going to talk about justice, restorative justice especially. I feel like that's where the steps need to go priority wise. Don't focus so much on forgiveness, I would say. Focus more on repairing trust. When this video comes out, if anybody was to see it from the videos I mentioned, that's how I feel like it should go. Maybe to Idubbb's credit, I want to say he was willing to talk with other people, with a black woman. He was willing to put himself in that situation and be uncomfortable, step out of his comfort zone. That's like that is the baseline that he should start with. And I can't say for certain what amends are going to look like in this case with him. Maybe it could be like the tax collector, where his way of making amends was to give the money back to the people he harmed 4 times over. I mean, my understanding is Idubbbz did make money from this content that did harm people. Maybe that could be a starting point. But again, that's not my place. That's still not my place to say what he should or shouldn't do. And it's not my place to tell anybody if they should start trusting him or forgiving him even. That is not my place. I'm not the person that was harmed from his content. Not directly. You are not obligated to forgive somebody like that, or even to trust them again, especially if you're black. I'm saying that because that was the main group that was harmed from his content, from the guy's past content. That's why I'm saying that. But you're not obligated to forgive or trust him if you do not feel like you're moved to do so. But I feel like the main priority when we have these type of conversations, when we're talking to people, when we try to start conversations with people who have caused harm, if they want to put in the work, if they truly want to put in the work to repair the harm that was caused, I feel like maybe we should reframe it. Instead of seeking forgiveness, it should be seeking trust, seeking to repair the trust that was broken from all that. And again, I'm not saying that you shouldn't try to seek forgiveness. That is definitely a noble effort you should do. But I feel like if you harm someone and you want to make amends, I feel like you should probably focus more on earning their trust. Because that is something that needs to be earned. Period. Again, that's my opinion. Trust is quantifiable, and I feel like if you try and frame the conversation about trying to earn someone's trust, then the onus, I feel, would more be placed on the person that did the harm rather than the person that was harmed. I think that's what I'm trying to get at. I don't know. I feel like maybe if we tried doing that instead, then maybe things would move along better. We wouldn't be caught in such a stasis of being scared, of not being forgiven. And again, I don't know what that's gonna look like, what that would look like. It would probably depend on the situation. And also, if you're someone who's caused harm and you want to make amends, I think you really do need to make peace that not everybody is going to forgive you. I think you also need to make peace that not everybody is going to trust you again. Maybe they will trust you again, but maybe not fully. Again, I mentioned trust is something that is, I think, more or less can be quantified. There are varying levels of trust. Maybe there are people out there that would trust you wholeheartedly again when they see the steps that you're making to try and make yourself better, and also to repair the damage that was caused. But that's not always going to be the case. Maybe some people will still trust you, but there will be conditions placed on that trust. And then there are still people out there that are not going to trust you again, no matter what you do. And no matter, I don't think whether you do still want to go about it as however you want to go about it, whether your main goal is seeking forgiveness or repairing trust, I think you need to do so. But also having to come to terms and make peace that maybe that's never going to be given, forgiveness or trust. Maybe it'll take time. It might take a lifetime even. But that's still something you need to make peace on. If you still need to come to terms that not everybody is going to trust you again, or if they do, it's probably going to be on a lower level than it was before. I don't know. This is all just my opinion. I'll leave a link in the description of the video I mentioned, Illuminati with iDubbbz. I'll also link Cat Black's video on the guy too, because that's where I heard about him from. And if you want something a little more thought-provoking, I guess, when talking about harm and justice and forgiveness and all that other stuff, I'll have links in the description from other YouTube creators who go into a little more depth in that than I could hope to. And yeah, that's it. That's all I got to say on it. This is Lydia, also known as the Pup, signing off.